Hi, welcome to Caroline's Crash Course. My name is Caroline. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Caroline. Hi, everybody. Let's open this meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. So this is only one person's perspective, okay? It's mine. Take what works. Comments are welcome. Personal sharing can be sent to my email, meetgodwithme@gmail.com. Workbooks are available upon request. We're starting step 6 today. Oh yeah. We're going to read the profile for step 6. And it reads, Sarah, a middle-aged wife and mother, was having arguments with her husband over money. Sarah. Her frustration and intensity were growing worse. As her emotional disturbance grew worse, her advisor reminded her to work the 12 steps on this before she was totally out of control. Listen. The insanity will return, and you will drink again. If you don't find a spiritual release for your frustrations. It breeds isolation and bitterness and self-righteousness and all the things that block you off from God that we just found in step 5. If they're not addressed and removed, not by us, but by God, we'll learn in this step. Or if we're not willing to have them removed and look for alternatives, we are quite sure to relapse. Okay. It's a fact of experience. Okay, so after recognizing that she was powerless over her husband's behavior, she was able to turn him over to God. By examining herself in step 4, she found she had been critical of her husband, she had shamed him and tried to control him, and she had been anxious and fearful. Oh, I know, Sarah. I know. She shared her journaling with a trusted sponsor or advisor who directed her to step 6. In these steps, she looked at what these defects had done to her and to her relationship. Were they helping her to accomplish anything? If she had had enough of these defects and their consequences in her life, was she now ready to have God remove them? She had to face her fear of what might happen if God really did take these from her. By journaling along these lines, Sarah discovered that she was really being driven by fear of the future, fear of looking bad financially, and fear of scarcity. Sarah, I know what you feel. These fears led her to control and criticize, and her pride and anger made her feel powerful. Yeah, that's a false sense of power. She was reluctant to give up that power because it meant that she might feel vulnerable, and that is scary, Sarah. We understand. Trusting God with the finances seemed impossible. When she could see that these defects of character, pride, fear, anger, were detrimental to her marriage, to herself, and to her relationship with God, Sarah was ready to have them removed, as step 6 suggests. So, just so we're clear, it references pride, fear, and anger as being defects of character. Our defects of character stem from those sins, pridefulness. When they say fear, I'm going to say irrational fear, because fear is an instinct, and fear of itself is not a problem. When we react abnormally based on fear, that is where the defect is born. Okay, you're not going to be rid of fear. If you were rid of fear, you would be a sociopath. Okay, so it's a good thing to have fear. We must all discover, as Sarah did, that readiness to give up our defects occurs when the pain of acting them out becomes greater than what they do for us. Okay, the pain is going to outweigh the benefit. Sarah had to learn that God would have to remove these defects because they were so automatic. Power to change her attitudes and reactions was just as non existent for her as for any other person struggling with an addiction or dependency. The humility to admit this is difficult to find, but when the pain outweighs the gain, we realize once again that God is the one who is all powerful. When Sarah was ready to have God remove these defects, she could proceed to step 7. So, step 6, we became entirely ready to have God remove all these defects, to remove these defects of character. Step 6 is a pause step. Here we reflect on the information we have received about ourselves in completing steps 4 and 5 by making an inventory of ourselves and admitting our faults and shortcomings out loud to another person. So, just to reiterate that point, there's no action that we can take other than becoming willing in step 6. We don't remove our character flaws. The same way that we cannot remove the mania for alcoholism from our lives, we cannot remove these character flaws. These are the causes and conditions of why we drink and do drugs and why we have compulsive behaviors, right? We're just as powerless over the root of the defect, the root cause, as we are from the root sin of, addiction. Okay. I don't think an addiction is a sin itself. I think that sin stems from addiction. Addiction is a spiritual illness. It is a lack of conscious contact with God that is filled with substances. And of course, we have to, like we've learned, continue to put those things in our bodies and minds to achieve that sense of power that we just inevitably don't get, right? It's a sick cycle. Okay, so we have come a long way in developing a more accurate view of ourselves, in building deeper trust in God, and in recognizing the impact of our addictions and dependencies on ourselves and those around us. Our work is not done, however. Inventory is just the first half of the process through which, if we are thorough, we will walk away free from debilitating addiction. Now we must begin to allow God's Spirit to work deeply in our hearts. Allow God's Spirit to work deeply in our hearts, routing out our defects of character and making changes in our behavior and attitude that will bring wholeness and serenity. Making changes in our behavior and attitude that will bring about wholeness and serenity. At first glance, it seems obvious that we would, of course, be ready to have our defects of character removed. Why wouldn't we want to be flawless and blameless? Yeah, why wouldn't we? Isn't it our goal in the Christian walk to be perfected in the image of Christ? Some of our character defects have been useful to us, however, and they have sometimes been necessary for survival. It can be very difficult to let them go when they have been so automatic and so deeply ingrained, but to have a successful, serene recovery, we must let God chisel away at the defects that have been our default mode. This process of becoming entirely ready can bring grief. It's like letting go of old friends, and this is painful even when these defects have outlived their usefulness to us and to God. Now, it's important to remember, if you are familiar with the steps, in step 6 and 7, there's a prayer for participation, I guess, in those steps. And the prayer is basically asking God to remove these things that are blocking you off from your usefulness to Him and to your fellows. Because, of course, the point is to get out of self, get rid of enough self so that you can be of maximum service to God. We're in the world to play the role God has assigned us, right? And sometimes there are things within us that we deem defective, that we want to be rid of, that are still useful. And we've talked about this ad infinitum with the last few steps. God takes all this brokenness and makes something out of it. Everything works to the glory of God. It's not our job to figure out why or when, right? You might have to make a jerk of yourself in front of people, and that can be useful for you and for others. It's painful. It's called discipline. It's called chiseling away. He's chipping away at the old block, right? He's creating a masterpiece. And these things, these sharp edges that we have sometimes are useful until they're no longer useful. God deems when and where that happens, right? And how. And the duration, right? Okay, so moving forward, it is important that we take time again to reflect and even grieve about how the disease of addiction has affected us. We may have lost significant time with family and friends because of some of our character defects, not to mention our jobs and reputation. Yeah, we have lost significant time with family and friends, like the people that are like, you know how short life is? The people that you need to nourish and nurture and comfort, right? Our defects they steal time from us. Like our resentments, our defects, our sins, they steal time from us. They steal joy and compassion and commitment and companionship from us. It's so like when you realize how separate from God you really are because of these things. The desperation comes back for these things to be removed the same way we were desperate to get out of that pit in step 1, right? So, facing the brokenness of our sinful human condition is heartbreaking, as David learned in his life. He began as a man after God's own heart, with enough faith to slay giants, but later in his life he committed adultery and murder. His success in bold acts of faith as a young man led him to believe that he was invincible, or perhaps, after he became king, that laws and rules did not apply to him. That is self-righteousness. Entitlement. Addiction is like that. It can embolden us to act profitably in the beginning, yet it brings grandiosity and arrogance, which lead to our rationalizing the breaking of morals, laws, and rules. As David, and like you can see the destruction, like hopefully you don't stay there too long, because you will get loaded again. You will have a lapse of judgment and go back to those old patterns, those old ways, the old way of living, if you don't recognize it. We have to fetch ourselves up sharply here, as Bill would say. As David faced the reality of his sin, he began to see the arrogance of his youth and the value of humility. Some people never get there, guys. Listen, I'm going to tell you the most important thing, most profound thing, most simple thing that I've ever been told. No one else in the whole world has to do a dang thing but you. Okay? You're the only one that has to work a program. Even though so many people definitely need it, right? You know? Such humility before God is forged through a broken spirit and a repentant heart. Not everybody has that. There are people working for God, and there are people working for the darkness. We are not the same. One huge character defect for all of us is trying to make life work in our own power. Welcome to the human condition. As God says through the prophet Isaiah, you spend your money on food that does not give you strength. You ever put something in or wasted your time and resources on something that was not nourishing, that was not nurturing your soul, your spirit, your body, your mind, your relationships? Yeah, we do that, don't we? Putting things in the wrong spot. We often believe in our self-sufficiency that if we can only fill this hungry hole in our souls with alcohol, food, sex, money, power, or pornography, we will be satisfied. These turn out to be empty wells, but we keep compulsively running to them. That's just like David, you know, like the beginning of success kind of tricked him into thinking that he got this. You know, he took that and his perspective was skewed by success, by power, by the sense of comfort and ease that he got, right? The same way we do. And so this sense of power gives us this false sense of superiority, which it's not ours. It was never ours to begin with, right? It belongs to the Most High. So we become addicted and dependent. I'm sorry, did I skip something? These turn out to be empty wells, but we keep compulsively running to them. We become addicted and dependent. It's cyclical. In step 6, we become entirely ready by once more acknowledging that our ways of handling life, even if they have helped us survive in the past, are not what God intends for us. This is a call to remember the second half of the first step. Our lives have become unmanageable. These are the things that make us unmanageable. We need management. We need power. Okay? We become ready to have God remove these defects while acknowledging that we have no power to change ourselves. We have no power to change ourselves. Hear this. Here again, we must have our prideful ego dashed if we are to have freedom and serenity. If, after looking at our list of defects, we embark on our own self-improvement program, we may pour a lot of frantic energy into quote-unquote getting better and trying harder without any real change occurring. We all have seen this happen. If you've spent any time at all in recovery, you've seen this happen. The removal of defects is a spiritual surgery that must be accomplished by God's hand. Yeah, if you let him, if you even get that far, if you're even willing to have that stuff removed, if you even think it's a problem to begin with, right? No one else in the world can tell me what my defects are and that I need to have them removed except me. I have to understand the truth about myself. People can tell me the truth about myself until they're blue in the face. No one can tell you the truth about yourself enough for you to change, for you to recognize it. You have to experience the truth within yourself by yourself. People might be able to point it out, and lucky for you if you can pick that up and run with it and do something about it, and, you know, that's great. Good for you. That doesn't happen for me. I have to struggle, and I have to come to it on my own, or it's just not going to happen. That's just been the way my life has turned out with my addictive compulsive behaviors. Hopefully, hey, it's just a general statement. It doesn't have to be everybody's experience. It's just my experience. We must let go of the struggle, give over our will on each defective character. Oh, that sounds painstaking. And become open to his work in our heart, grasping our complete dependence upon him for lasting change. Takes a great deal of humility and willingness. However, let us not assume that we are to sit around and wait for God to work magic on us. Becoming ready for him to remove our defects means that we develop humility and willingness, and to become open to behaving and acting differently. The interaction between Jesus and the crippled man lying by the pool of Bethesda exemplifies this aspect of step 6. Like this man, we who are addicted have a sincere desire to be healed, to rise up and be productive, and to live a meaningful, purposeful life. If you don't have that, something's wrong with you. Again, I don't mean to be glib. If you don't have a sense of conviction, of a need for purpose, something is wrong with you. Every human being should have that. We may get ourselves right to the edge of significant progress and recovery, but our character defects have crippled us so that we are paralyzed by fear and cannot get to the next level. We have to let go of familiar patterns that are easy for us, even if they are hurtful or debilitating. God, I know that's true. I'm just sitting here like, I need to pray about that. I need to pray about that. I need to pray about that. We may be daunted by the prospect of living in reality with no anesthetic, and we're referring to our addictive behaviors here. It's too risky. Fear of failure, rejection, or abandonment set in, and we sit by the side of the pool complaining about our helplessness or feeling sorry for ourselves because we must change and work at sobriety when the rest of the world can still enjoy the pleasures of whatever addiction is our comfort. Can they? Can they, though? You're envious of someone that's going to end up in the same position you're in? Don't be envious. Trust me, it's a luxury you cannot afford. This step focuses our attention on being entirely ready, as though Jesus were saying to us, would you like to get well? Again, I say, how free do you want to be? As we look inside our hearts, all our excuses, resistance, procrastination, and avoidance of recovery pop up. As for this crippled man, Jesus doesn't validate our excuses. He challenged the man to get up, pick up his mat, and walk. Jesus is challenging us in this step to have God remove all these defects of character. In other words, we are invited to step out in faith, take action toward the recovery behaviors we need to develop, and leave the rest to God. When this man took action, God's healing took place. When we do our part by choosing to act differently in the moment, God removes the defects. No matter how scary or uncomfortable it may be, we can become willing to take new actions toward fulfilling God's will. We may not feel, listen, this is me. This is me. This is what I say all the time. We may not feel like being honest where we have been dishonest. We may not feel like being considerate when we have been selfish. We may not feel like courageously facing our problems head on instead of running from responsibility. But when we become entirely ready and are willing to allow God to help us to be willing, to willingly do our part by living rightly in the moment, God removes our defects by supplying His power and His Spirit to make these changes in us. Over time, our defects are replaced with character strengths. And it's all in there. It's all inside there. Everything that's inside of you can be transformed, and all that goodness that is transformed, it all came from inside of you. All that crap that's inside of you, right? God has to get in there and do His little surgery, but it's all in there. It's been in there. You were born with it. The opposite of your character defect is a spiritual principle. If you have a character flaw and you learn to use it rightly, or you ask for its removal, or you ask for balance, or whatever it is that you need in that area, there is a spiritual principle on the other side of that. It is already within you. Our character defects are principles misused. They are instincts perverted. You're not defective. You've just been using your power the wrong way. And anyway, that might be too much. We're going to get into it, sorry. We'll get into that later. Working step 6 in this way prepares us for step 7. Okay, so today we're in the book of Genesis. Just a couple little spots in Genesis. We're going to be talking about grieving some losses. Genesis chapter 23, verses 1 through 4. And then we'll read 35, 19 through 21. Okay, so 23, 1 through 4. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died at Hebron in the land of Canaan. It wasn't called Hebron, but I just called it Hebron because it's now called Hebron. I can't pronounce the place that it used to be called, so. I'm glad they changed the name. There, Abraham mourned and wept for her. So this was his companion. This is relating your character defects the things that bring you comfort, or sometimes the things that bring you survival, they are your companion. And they even, like the circle of life, they all have an expiration date, right? Just as Sarah did for Abraham. Then leaving her body, he said to the Hittite elders, "Here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial." And going to Genesis 35, 19 through, where am I? Genesis 35, 19 through 21. It reads, "So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Bethlehem." Well, it's Bethlehem now, but it used to be called something else. Ephrath. I don't know if I said that right. Let me know in the comments. Jacob set up a stone monument over Rachel's grave, and it can be seen there to this day. Then Jacob traveled, which Jacob I believe is now Israel, wrestles with God. So Jacob, Israel, we who wrestle with God, traveled on and camped beyond Migdal Eder. Okay. While he was living there, Reuben, I passed by it. That was the it. Jacob traveled on. I should have stopped there. Sorry, we were getting something that doesn't belong in here. Okay, so our 12-step devotional. Whew, I'm getting hot. This baby's kicking my butt. Okay. So, taking time to grieve. We were entirely ready for God to remove all these defects of character. The pathway to recovery and finding new life also involves the death process. The different means we used to use to help us cope were defective, but still, they did give us comfort or companionship. Giving them up is often like suffering the death of a loved one. Abraham and his grandson Jacob both lost loved ones as they traveled to the Promised Land. Sarah died at Hebron in the land of Canaan. There Abraham mourned and wept for her. Then, leaving her body, he said, "Here I am, a stranger and a foreigner among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can give my wife a proper burial." Then Abraham buried his wife Sarah there. A generation later, Jacob was given a new name, Israel, and the promise of a great heritage in the Promised Land. On his way there, he too lost his beloved wife. She died while giving birth to their son Benjamin, so Rachel died and was buried on the way to Bethlehem. Jacob set up a stone monument over Rachel's grave, and it can be seen there to this day. Then Jacob traveled on. As we journey on in our new life, we will necessarily lose some of our defective ways of coping. When this happens, we need to stop and take time to give our losses a proper burial. We need to put them away, cover the shame, and allow ourselves to grieve the loss of something very familiar to us. When the time of grieving is over, we too can journey on. Amen. Journey on. Carry on, my wayward son. There'll be peace when you... Okay, sorry. All right, so, taking time to grieve. Questions. Number 1, I think there's only one question. It's just like a long question. Yeah. So, what are the defects identified in steps 4 and 5 that are standing in the way of my recovery and service to God? Make a list. Okay, self-righteous, quick to anger, obstinate, self-pitying, more like self-condemning, I think. Yeah, but pitying is also one. Overly sacrificial, codependent, or just dependent. I don't know. My spiritual advisor was like, "What's codependent?" It's just dependent. I was like, all right, whatever. What have each of these done for me and against me? Okay, listen. I'm going to go The way I write it, you don't have to do it this way. The way I write it is I make a list of the words themselves, the defects, right? And then I do column by column. So defect, is it positive or negative, right? So what about it is positive, and what about it is negative? And really, above the word positive, I wrote fancied, or like fantasy, right? Because the positive aspects of character defects really are just excuses. Did I say that? Okay. And that over the top of the negative of the defect, I put reality. Okay. So I've got the fancied idea of what the defect gives me, and then I have the reality of what the defect gives me. Okay. And I write them column by column, but we're going to read them across. Okay. So the defect, self-righteousness. What fancied positive trait? It gives me false comfort, right? I was going to say, oh, it gives me comfort. No, it's false comfort. That's fantasy. The reality is, it is a bar against growth. Quick-tempered. What is a positive? A sense of relief, okay? A sense of relief is not actual relief, right? So that's fancied. It's a fantasy. The reality, or the negative, is my quick temper breeds superiority and isolation. There's no room for God or others when I'm practicing that defect. Okay, obstinate. The positive thing I wrote was, it protects me, quote unquote. Does it? Does it, Caroline? No, it just keeps you from being vulnerable. It doesn't protect you, though. And the negative, the reality of the situation is, it keeps me from growing. Self-pity. What is the positive thing? Oh, it gives me comfort. Does it? Who came to your pity party, Caroline? What comfort did it bring? The reality, the negative. My self-pity turns morbid and breeds harm, whether it's self-harm or others' harm. Over-sacrificial. The positive trait, I can't believe I wrote this, proves I'm good. That is a fantasy. I don't need to overly sacrifice anything. I don't need to give until I'm depleted to prove that I'm good. God knows that I'm good. Why do we do this to ourselves? You don't have to prove it. Your faith proves that you're good, right? Your faithful actions. The reality is, being over-sacrificial harms me and enables them. 100%, dude. 100%, dude. Okay, and then, this is not a comprehensive list, okay? It's just like the ones that I filled in the blanks. Dependent, or codependent, whatever. Dependent. The positive relieves me of abandonment, right? That's a fantasy. No, it doesn't. The reality, or the negative aspect is, it removes... Wait. Oh, removes God. Yeah, because if I'm dependent on something, some human power, right? I'm removing God. Gives power to Satan, is what I wrote. As you look at this list, take time to grieve. Feel the pain of the loss of both the positive and negative parts. Some suggestions are: write about what you will miss about your defects and what you look forward to when they are removed. I don't know if I'm going to miss it, but I mean, I'm sure I'll miss it for sure. But write what you have learned about yourself and seeing the positive and negative parts. This third suggestion, I'm not a fan of, but you do you, boo, okay? It says, have a burial service. The old has passed away, so burn what you have written or rip up the list of defects. Babe, listen, you're going to need to refer to the list again. So maybe don't burn it. We should put it in a time capsule. How about that? That's my third suggestion. Have a burial service, put it in a time capsule, and then bury it. And then when you're done with like your steps, or like maybe like a year from now or whatever, like what you pray about these things in step 7, we'll get there. We're not there yet. But we're just trying to find things that we're willing to have removed, right? The things that are blocking us off from God. Like when you make this list, And you start praying about this stuff, and it starts getting removed. God starts chipping away at that old block. Listen, please come to me and tell me whenever it is that you pull your time capsule up. Tell me if it's like a month from now, whenever you're done with the steps, whenever you start sponsoring, a year from now, whatever. Or like you forget about it and then you move. Tell me about it. I want to know. I want to know the miracles that have happened in your life, the miracle of healing, the miracle of removal of these sins and these defects. I want to know about it. Okay, well, hey, welcome. We're here. That was good. That was long. Jesus loves you. I love you. See you guys tomorrow, okay? Make it a great day. The choice is yours. Bye.